He is the host of the Pod Strickland on the Strickland, which covers the New York Knicks. We welcome ShwinnyPooh onto Hoopsology. How's it going?
Pretty good, man. Just waiting for the old Monday Night Football to kick off here. So I'm not a big preseason guy. I'm not sitting here crunching Toronto Raptors preseason film or anything.
Neither am I. Yeah, I can care less about the preseason, but wanted, I guess, to have you on because the Knicks have really been, capturing kind of the league by storm. Even though, what happened in the playoffs happened to the Atlanta Hawks, but whenever the Knicks are relevant, I think the NBA is better for it. So I guess I want to ask you, what are your general feelings of just you covering the team overall? Are you optimistic? Are you skeptical? Because if you kind of been down this road before, where you've seen some hope, and then it kind of sometimes ends in a disastrous fashion. So where do you kind of lie in terms of your optimism heading into this season?
I'm super optimistic about this season and just like the general direction of the franchise right now. Most of the time, previously when they've had like winning seasons, it hasn't really felt sustainable. They haven't really had young talent. They haven't had a lot of their own first round picks. This is like a totally different thing where they have all their first round picks. They have a first round pick from Charlotte. They have a first round pick from Dallas. They've got God knows how many second round picks. It's kind of funny. Like you guys know that Real GM page. It's like the future drafts detailed. Like for all of my life, page has been the most depressing part of being a Knicks fan. It's like you're out like 7 first round picks. You don't have any second round picks, and now it's the exact opposite. They don't owe anybody a pick, and they have so many picks coming in from elsewhere. Julius Randle. Obviously, there's a lot of was it real? Was it not real? I think that there's room for like maybe the 3-point shooting. I don't think he's a 41% 3-point shooter, but is he a 37% 3-point shooter? Yeah, I think so. And I think with better spacing, since you're not going to be playing with Elfrid Payton, he's gonna have a lot more shots at the rim instead of having to settle for so many mid-range pull-ups like he did last year, and probably finish better at the rim just because again they'll have better spacing. And then you have RJ Barrett, who is 21 years old. Quickly is 22 years old. Mitchell Robinson's 22 years old. Obi Toppin, who really struggled for, I would say, the first 4 or 5 months of the season. And then, obviously, look, a lot of people that don't watch the Knicks, which if you're not a Knicks fan, I understand, I think people had already written him off as like he's a bust or whatever. And I don't even necessarily believe he's going to be a Knick for super long because I don't know the path for him to be a high minutes player in the Knicks with Julius Randle existing. But like he really started contributing and looked really good actually at various points throughout the stretch of the season. And the playoffs, he was one of the few guys in the team that actually exceeded expectations. So yeah, I mean, I'm really, really optimistic about this team. I think it's in a really good place. Both in terms of kind of like the ability to make trades. They have a lot of draft capital. They have a lot of good contracts. They have a lot of easy contracts that you can slide in, package together for, to make salaries match. And then obviously the big swing piece is like, I mean, Kemba Walker doesn't need to be an all-star, but if he's just like, if he's literally what he was last year, but a little bit more healthy, that's a massive upgrade for the Knicks. And I really don't think people that did not watch the Knicks a lot last year, I don't think they have a real grasp of like the difference between going from Elfrid Payton to Kemba Walker.
So what is your expectations in terms of the playoffs? Like, obviously the Knicks are, I think, beyond the playing game. So that pretty much means like that middle of the pack, maybe 4 to 5 seed, or maybe at perhaps the top half of the Eastern Conference. I mean, Philly's kind of an unpredictable situation, as well as Boston, considering what happened with them last year. So what are your expectations as like a Knicks fan covering this team? Where I guess what I'm asking is, where do you see like your disappointment? If like a 7-8 seed, is that going to be disappointing, or do you have like higher expectations?
I mean, it really depends. I don't really have I guess the way I think of it is, I think Milwaukee and Brooklyn are in their own tier in the East. Like, I just think they're clear. But then like the rest of the conference, I mean, I have, for me, and this is just me, I think Atlanta, I think Miami, Philly, the Knicks, Boston, and Indiana. That's 6 teams. I think they're like all in this tier together underneath. So like, could they be a play-in team? Yeah, I think they could be a play-in team. Would it surprise me if they finished 4th or 3rd? Like, I mean, I wouldn't bet on them being 3rd, but like 4th, I really don't think it's like I get the skepticism that a lot of people have of the team, but I also think like, for whatever Tibbs's flaws are as a coach, the guy wins regular season games. Like the only place he had basically one bad year in Minnesota, and everybody's like, well, he's the league's passing by, and like maybe, but all I know is that guy in Chicago basically every year won more games than people thought they were going to win. And you know, is he a good enough playoff coach? That's a separate question. But as far as like finishing, where do they finish? I think they're a pretty solid bet to be a top 6 team. I wouldn't necessarily be, you know, apoplectic if they have to play if they end up in the play-in game. I do think the East is better this year. I think a lot of teams around them got better. I think the Knicks got better, but I also just think like there's a lot of parity in that level beneath them, and like I'm kind of just okay with that. What I would say is like I think there's a difference between I I think the Knicks are set up like I don't really like where Miami is right now. And I know that's like some steaming hot takes that people like. I'm not. I love Kyle Lowry. I love him. I wanted the Knicks to sign him if we could have this offseason. I just don't think he's like for what they needed. I looked at that team last year and I'm like, they're old. They're not athletic. Like, what does Kyle Lowry change for them? Like, I know he's a better player than Goran Dragic. I agree with that, but he doesn't like really. I don't think he adds a significant element to that team that they were missing. And I was pretty concerned with what I saw from Butler towards the end of last year. That didn't just look like he's struggling with, his shot or something. It just looked like a guy who, look, we know that Jimmy Butler has logged a lot of minutes, and it's not even just the number of minutes, but the kind of like how hard a lot of those minutes were. I mean, we know what Tibbs put him through in Chicago, put him through that grinder, and in Minnesota. Like we know, and we know that when Jimmy Butler plays, like he goes balls out both sides of the ball. That's just who he is, and that's great. But I also think like some of the stuff we saw at the end of last season was really concerning. And I thought like, the Bucks, like it's kind of funny. They did to him what Miami did to Giannis the year before in the bubble, where they were just like, you can't shoot, and we're just going to defend you like that. So you want to come into the paint and try and score on Giannis and Brook Lopez and whoever else we got in there, like you can go for it. And I'm kind of like, and I know, I trust me, I'm not comparing Jimmy Butler to Elfrid Payton. I'm not, okay? But I do think that like we're at a point now in the league where when that book gets out on you of like, it's like these guys that can't shoot, when teams see that strategy worked, you see a lot of copycats. And I just saw that like last year at the start of preseason, I saw teams that were like, they were defending Elfrid Payton in a way that I hadn't seen before, but they were just like, he can't shoot. So let's just let him. We don't care what he does with it. We don't need to defend him. We don't need that. Like, and obviously Butler is a different caliber of player. He's still an all-star caliber player. He's still really good. But I do think that like when you get into those more high-end caliber matchups against better teams, I think a lot of teams are going to start playing it the way that Milwaukee did. And obviously not everybody has Giannis or Brook Lopez, but the idea of like, hey, look, Jimmy, if he wants to be out there on the perimeter with the ball, he can do what he wants, but we're not going to defend him, and we're not going to pretend like we need to close out hard on him. Quite frankly, we don't think we need to respect him off the ball either. And yeah, I don't know. Like the Miami thing, it just feels like I'm not. I think the bubble run they had was like pretty fortunate in a lot of ways, and I kind of think that's still clouding a lot of people's opinion of them. So if you really ask me of that group of teams, I said which one I'm like lowest on, it's probably Miami, because even though Boston didn't do anything drastic, the fact that they have Tatum and Brown at the ages they are, I think they have a lot of room for internal improvement in that sense. And also they just had a shit ton of injuries last year. So like, who knows? Maybe they can bounce back. I'm actually a little bit higher on them than a lot of my fellow Knicks fans are, and I think that makes them angry at me sometimes.